Hola, and welcome to Spanish with Matthew. So, today we're going to be talking about direct and indirect object pronouns in Spanish. I have a few examples set up here, and we're just going to go over them, and we're going to talk our way through how to figure these out. So, first of all, what I want to do with these sentences is I want to diagram each one, as Mr. Crone would say, and so we're able to find the subject, the verb, the direct object, and the pronoun modifying that direct object for these types of questions. So first of all, we want to underline the subject with the blue marker. So, ella contesta la pregunta. So, ella would be the subject, so we'll underline that once. We'll put this marker aside, and we'll move on to the red. And the red is what we're going to be using to underline the verb. So, contesta would be the verb, so we'll underline this twice. And then, finally, we're going to put a box around the direct object, which would be pregunta in this sentence. So we put a box around that, and then we use this same marker to show the pronoun that is modifying the direct object. And in this case, it will be la. So we are going to put an arrow connecting and showing what it's modifying to. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to translate it. So I'm going to take my green marker right here. Okay, so ella obviously means she. But instead of translating she answers the question, when we use a direct object pronoun, instead of saying she answers the question again, as in translating it, instead, if we put the la in front of contesta, it would say she answers it. So we wouldn't have to say she answers the question again. So it makes it easier to understand the sentence without being too repetitive. So this is how we translate it. It would sound she answers it. Because the la would be either the or it. And obviously the wouldn't make sense. So it would be she answers it. Okay? So let's move on to the next question. And I would also like to note that whenever you have an instance like this, and when this happens, you'll always see ella la contesta that's how you would translate this, because the direct object pronoun has to go in front of the verb. So just remember that as we go on in translating. So the next thing we're going to go over is next sentence. So, and this has to do with indirect object pronouns. Don't worry, we'll get back to direct object pronouns, but we're just going to move on for right now. So first, what we're going to go over is, what's the subject of the sentence? Nosotros hablamos a los alumnos nuevos. So when we see this verb, hablamos, we know, oh, okay, so the subject is obviously going to be we. So we see the nosotros, we underline that once, since we know that's going to be the subject. We put that aside. And the next thing we're going to do is underline the verb. And that would be not a los alumnos nuevos, but it would be hablamos. So we underline that twice. And then what we're going to do next is, so we see this right here. So in English, that makes you think, oh, okay, so means to, so this would have to be a prepositional phrase here. But that's in English. But in Spanish, when you have the instance where he gives a present to his mother. So that would be a little different. That wouldn't be a prepositional phrase in Spanish. It would actually be an indirect object. So that's what we have here. When you see that and then you see a recipient or some kind of person, that's showing an indirect object, not exactly a prepositional phrase. So what I want to do is, first of all, just put a little box around this because it's a very important part of this sentence. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, we're going to see, so what will we be doing this with los alumnos nuevos? Since we know that in Spanish, if you see that too, and then there's a person after it, that means there's some kind of an indirect object going on. So that's what that means. So anyway, what we're going to do here is we're going to see that, okay, well, this is going to, so alumnos, since it's the noun of these, it would have to be the indirect object. So we're going to circle that. And then, as you can see, that nuevos and los both describe it. So when you see this, we can tell. So it says, we speak to, but how would you translate the rest of it? So you have this problem here when it's like, well, this can't be a location and it has to be a person. So there's something missing here. And that's going to be the problem, because when you translate these sentences into Spanish, you have to see that there has to be something that goes in front of the hablamos here. So when it says we're speaking to the new students, that's plural. So what we do is, if you remember how, I'm just going to quickly go over this, the chart with the verbs me, te, lay, when you have gustar, aburrir, and I'm losing it, and interesar, excuse me. You use subject pronouns and indirect object pronouns in order to show what the subject would be. So let me just quickly conjugate those for you. So we'll go me, te, lay, nos, vos, lace. Okay, so that's what it would look like. So when you see this, nosotros hablamos a los alumnos, you can tell that there's obviously something missing here. So when we see this, and we see that this is a person, you say, oh, there's got to be something wrong here. So when that happens, what there should have been was, since you're talking to someone, it should say lace. Because this is plural, this is a third person, so you look directly to this right here. So if it's third person, you say, okay, well, we can look at our conjugation, the pronouns right here. So you can say, okay, so what's the third person plural? You say, oh, here's lace. So that's going to be what's going to be here. So we're saying, okay, so now we figured out the problem here. Now let's translate. So we have we, and then hablamos means speak, so we speak. And as I said before, a means to. And then you just regular translate, los alumnos nuevos, the new students. So you don't exactly translate this. It's just really describing this. So that's why, as we say in English, the definition of a noun is something that's it's a person, place, thing, or idea. But a pronoun takes the place of a noun or nouns. So that's what lace is doing right here. It's taking the place of this. So that's why we speak to the new students. That's why that would be translated that way. Okay, so let's move on to the next sentence. So he eats cereal with his friends. Okay, so this is going back to this whole idea right here. So right here we have he eats cereal with his friends. So let's just normally translate it and then we'll take it from there. So he would be the subject in this sentence. Eats would be the verb in this sentence. And then we would see, oh, look at that. So we can just ignore this prepositional phrase for a second because we see that he eats cereal. Okay, well, cereal is taking the action of eats. So that must be the direct object. So we'll just put a box around that. Okay, and then now we'll come to the prepositional phrase, and we'll just put some parentheses around it. Perfect. All right, and then we also want to diagram the fact that his is modifying friends because this is also a pronoun. Perfect. All right, so now we take it from here. So instead of, as I was saying before, direct object pronouns, instead of saying he eats cereal, instead of a response, so if I was writing an essay and I write he eats cereal with his friends, I wouldn't say again, he eats cereal. I would say he eats it. So that's what I'm planning on doing right here. So let's just regularly translate, and then once again, we'll take it from there. So the verb for eats is comer. So it would be el come. And then we'll just skip cereal for a second here because that's the toughest part of the sentence because we're not entirely sure how to take it from there. So we'll just put that aside and then we'll just translate this right here. So we have con sus amigos. Okay, so if we want to say cereal and not say cereal meal, want to use a direct object pronoun, how would we do this? So let's take a look. Let's go back to the example on number 1 that I did. So how would we do this? So we take a look at this. So first of all, you have to think, what gender is cereal? Is it masculine, feminine? And the answer to that is masculine. So we'd have to think the pronoun that we would use would be el. But you still have to think, how would we use this? What would happen here? So you end up saying that, okay, so if I don't want to say cereal, then I'll have to say el. But oh, we have a problem right here. I said earlier that if you were going to have la, it has to go in front of the verb. So our problem right here is the fact that there's no L in front of come. So what we're going to do is we're just going to erase this. It's like it's no big deal. It's no problem. And it actually is a little bit of a problem. This board's such a pain. But anyway, that's not a big deal right now. So anyway, so if I know that this is el cereal, so then I'm going to bring this L down right here. So it'll be, so instead of saying he eats cereal with his friends, you can just say he eats it with his friends. So this is just an interesting example because it's LL come, con sus amigos. You won't normally see these two back to back, but when you do, it's just kind of interesting. But yeah, so that's another example right there. So the next thing, we're going to move back to indirect object pronouns. Now, in my opinion, they're a little bit more challenging because you have to know which pronoun to use. So first, let's just diagram it normally. So John's going to be our subject. And this is just the easy part. But, you know, it's nice that it's very important that you diagram first. It's very helpful. And I didn't think that at first, but overlooking it now, it makes it much easier during the process. So we have John reads the book to us. So now we have reads, that's going to be our verb. And then we do have a direct object here, which is book. So we're going to put a little box around that. We have the, that's describing the book. And then to us, which is going to be, we can just put it in red. That's going to be our little, what we think in English would be our prepositional phrase. As I was going up here, this was our problem. So we had a los alumnos nuevos. As I was saying, in English you think it's no big deal. It's just a prepositional phrase. But in Spanish, as I was saying, it's not going to be a prepositional phrase. It's going to be an indirect object. So we just take away those little parentheses marks because you say, oh, well, this is going to be a circle and not parentheses because it's not a prepositional phrase. So what we're going to do is first we're just going to go over this easily. So we're just going to translate just a little bit. So you just go John, and then the word for reads is lee. Okay, and this is a big example because this is kind of like the double whammy here because you can have both. John reads the book to us because you have a direct object and an indirect object in this sentence. So it's kind of like a double whammy, if you will. So first of all, let's tackle the book first because that's closest. That's in math. You usually just go left to right. Yes, left to right. So we might as well just just get that done first since it's closer to the beginning of the